Texas Health and Human Services. We want to thank them for supporting this conference and the success it has been. Remember, this is a safe and supportive space. Please be mindful of that and be respectful and inclusive in this environment. We know that the topic that we're going to be discussing can sometimes be debatable in a heated conversation. If you are in this room in person, please do not join Hoover online. If in this discussion you get overwhelmed or feel as if you need to take a break from this room, please go ahead and step out, take care of yourself. If you need to visit our comfort suite, it is still open and it is right next door. So you just go out the door straight to the right and it's still set up through this last session. If you are getting CEUs on the wall, there are 2 QR codes. One is for the survey and one is for the CEUs. Or if you prefer to sign in, just let us know. And Miss Jackie can bring that sign-in sheet around and you can sign in to get your CEUs. Finally, I can't end without telling you to check out our website, get some great conference merchandise or merchandise that supports the Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. That website is ctaafsc.com/shop. Now I want to introduce our presenter, the Honorable Judge Tanisha Jeffers. Tanisa Jeffers is an associate judge of the Austin Municipal Court and a magistrate judge for Travis County. Tanisa was appointed as a judge by the Austin City Council in 2018. Prior to her appointment to the bench, she practiced family and criminal law in the state of Texas with an emphasis on those diagnosed with a mental health condition. For example, Axis 1 diagnosis of bipolar, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, or major depression. She is a certified mediator and uses those negotiation strategies routinely in garnering the appropriate outcomes for her clients. Representing individuals with mental health diagnosis requires going the extra mile to ensure they are treated fairly and receive the special treatment they need in both family and criminal law cases. She works very hard to make sure a successful outcome can be had by looking at all aspects of the case: the need for housing, whether Social Security disability has been awarded, medication compliance, and case management services. Let us welcome Judge Tanisa Jeffers.
Thank you. Reminded me to use the mic, right? Thank y'all. Thank y'all for hanging with me on the last session of the day of day 2. I have been very proud to be here in the Austin community representing those with a mental illness in both civil work and on the criminal side. Most of you probably know, who are familiar with the mental health community here, Travis County became a model court for representing the mentally ill on the criminal side all the way back in 2006. So what we do here has been modeled around the country. So I've been very proud to be a part of that. I represented the mentally ill for more than 18 years before my appointment to the bench by the Austin City Council. Now, as an associate judge of the Austin Municipal Court, as you know, we see a lot of our homeless individuals. And unfortunately, many of them struggle with a mental illness. So thankfully, the city council recognized that I could aid by coming on over. And in doing that work, I work as a Travis County magistrate judge. So I did that part-time for 4 years. Earlier this year, I became the full-time associate judge of your night court for Travis County. So when something happens in the nighttime, whether it be a murder, DWI, some kind of assault, you see me. Okay, so that's where we end up. So unfortunately, in that work, I deal with a lot of guns. And I must say, I've got 3 young people that I mother. They are 18, 20, and 22 years of age. They are out here in the community on 6th Street here and about. And we've got a lot of young people with guns, y'all. It's really kind of scary. I can tell you that especially our young men between 16 and about 42 years of age, if they're in a car, they more than likely have a gun in that car. So you need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of that whenever we get into altercations with people and we on the road and all of that. You just need to be aware. There are a lot of guns in our community. Every time I meet with a law enforcement officer, because of course we support the 9 law enforcement agencies that are here in Travis County as a magistrate judge. That's who I see all night long, are police officers. And so I'm always asking, how can we get rid of these guns? What's going on? What's your solution? Do the buyback programs work? And they always tell me, oh no, they don't work. People bring their oldest, shoddiest gun, they get the $100, and then the neat guns they keep, right? So that's what happens. Also, what we saw in the pandemic is people were nervous, right? So we had more folks. We didn't know what was going to happen. None of us knew we were even going to be here in March of 2020 when everything got shut down, right? I can remember still sitting in a restaurant. It was my husband's birthday. We were since divorced. Yes, it was a pandemic divorce. Yes, it was a good thing. But in any event, we were still married at that time and we're celebrating his birthday. And all of a sudden the restaurant gets shut down, March 17, 2020. And we're like, what's going on? He's looking, what's going on? Right? COVID had reared its ugly head across the pond in the United States. We had been watching it on the news, right? Over there in China, everything's going on, what's happening. So, but nobody knew what was going to occur. So what we saw was folks wanted to make sure they stocked up. So they stocked up on food and water. They also stocked up on their guns. But what we got to make sure we do is there is some responsible gun ownership, right? And that's part of what I want to talk to y'all about today. Jose Garza, our current district attorney, has started some gun prevention programs in our local community. Some of it has been well received. Some of it has not been. Luckily, we are the blueberry in the sea of red here in the state of Texas. So for the most part, we do try to be more progressive and to do things that we think can help the community more so than in our more red areas of the state. But let me start. I really just want to give you an overview first of permitless carry. So, you know, our governor and the legislator pushed that through. And so most folks that I meet when they come into night court really think it's the Wild Wild West. Miss, Judge, I can have a gun. They got a gun. I can have a gun too, right? Yes, but you still must follow the law. And that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. You still got to follow the law. And so my young African-American and Hispanic boys don't always know what the law is. So I can tell you that anytime I have an unlawful carrying of a weapon, that is a Class A misdemeanor, folks say, oh, that's just a misdemeanor. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal. When they get out on bond, as a condition of that bond, I make them take a gun education program within 30 days of release, and they must provide that proof to pretrial services. Pretrial services is our entity here that makes sure and supervises all these folks out on personal bond, right? And when I first started doing that, you know, a lot of people got nervous. Well, why are you making people do stuff, right? They're innocent until proven guilty per the Constitution. You're right, they are. I'm not saying you're guilty of anything, but if you got arrested, I'll make you take a class so you know how to use that gun properly. That's where I'm coming from. I think education helps us all. You get a DWI and you see me, I'm gonna make you take an alcohol class. Don't argue with me about it in my court because I'm gonna make you do something else. So, I mean, that's really the standpoint that I'm coming from. I think education helps us all, that we all must be educated about what our laws say. That's where I'm coming from. All right. So these are our learning objectives. I'm going to look this way because that's kind of overwhelming. We're going to talk about permitless carry. We're going to talk about the types of places, and then we're going to talk about the authority for it. Constitutional carry is a big deal. There are some states across our country that instituted it, and there are some that have not. What constitutional carry says is Second Amendment gives me the right to own a gun. I don't need a license. That's basically what it says, right? But here in Texas, these laws govern whether or not you really have to have a license to carry or not. For the most part, you don't have to have a license to carry. They're correct, but we still need to be aware of what the law says and where we're going. Okay, so we're going to start off with the grand overview. This is what a handgun is, all right? Anything designed, made, or adapted to be fired, right? You got these kids on YouTube. Look, before I took the bench, I was your Travis County Drug Court defense attorney for 4 years. I had 2 or 3 clients. Guess what I would always ask them weekly, what'd you do this weekend? And I had 2 or 3 clients that would say, well, I replaced the carburetor in my truck. And I'm like, you did? How'd you do that? On YouTube. So what I need y'all to be aware of is that on YouTube, they have plenty of videos that show you how to modify a gun, how to make gun out of various things. I mean, YouTube is amazing. And these young people are looking at it. So if you got teens and you got young people in your house like I do, you know, sure, it's just about what's going on, right? So in having that handgun, which we identified, which they can now sort of make pieces for and modify on YouTube. That's the reason why I'm telling you that. Our permitless carry laws say as long as it's in a holster, you won't get arrested, which means you won't see me. So here's the big takeaway in your car. Carrying, because I have some young people that want to argue with me about what carry means. It wasn't on my person. I wasn't carrying it. What it means. Carry means having it in an area nearby. Don't say home. That's what our law says. Okay. In an area nearby, close at hand. That's carrying. It doesn't have to necessarily be on your person. So if an officer stops you for a traffic violation and he sees a gun sitting on your seat, you're carrying it. It's in plain view. He can see it. Does that make sense? All right. So, all right. Here are the things. This is where it gets murky. Are we in a car? We're not in a car. Are we at home? Or we're not at home? Is it holstered? Is it concealed? Right? That's what we want to talk about. Here are your relevant laws. They get the PowerPoint, right? Oh,
If there's a way they can reach out to you to get the PowerPoint, but
Okay.
I don't think it's not uploaded into Hoover
it's not
right now. No.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know that. All right. Well, here are your relevant laws. PowerPoint, I will definitely share it with you because I want to make sure that everybody knows what permitless carry in the state of Texas is. This is a gun pun. You can laugh if you want, but how do you put a gun in its place? Tell it the world doesn't revolve around it. All right. So that's my gun pun. You can share it with your kids. Who can carry and how can they carry? This is very important. All right. So how do we not come afoul of permitless carry? Because as I mentioned a moment ago, once permitless carry was passed in the state of Texas, everybody thought it was the Wild Wild West. Gun sales shot up. You've been hearing about it in the news. And listen, I just went to my license to carry class in September. I mean, it was full. And I was there at 8:15 in the morning. I work at night, right? I would work at 11. I get off at 7 a.m. I'm there at 8:15. It was people standing outside the door on like a Tuesday to buy guns. It's like the middle of the week, y'all, early in the morning. It's 4 or 5 people ahead of me. I'm just there to do my license to carry class. And I'm looking at these people like, oh, I hope, do they all got guns? Oh my God. They really make me nervous. I'm going to be honest. They do. But I'm a judge, so I have to deal with this. If in any event, $600 they spending on one handgun. I'm like floored. Like guns cost $600. I don't think I got anything in my house that costs $600. Maybe a chair. Did the sofa cost $600? I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's a lot of money. But anyway, okay. So here's how you not come afoul of permitless carry. You violate it if you don't have okay. Let me see. Let me be very clear. Can you have let's start with cars, because that's really where it starts generally. You're stopped for a traffic infraction. Officer walks up, he's got the flashlight, he's looking, right? And then you roll down the window. And so as long as the gun is not in plain view, right? It's concealed and you are not under the age of 21 and you are not in the middle of committing another criminal offense, then you won't be arrested for unlawful carrying of a weapon. You have not violated permitless carry. But there are a lot of little pieces to that, right? So my son is 20. And he's like, when he turned 20, he was like, so Mom, I'm in Texas, I'm in college. Can I get a gun? Hell no. You cannot, because I don't want there to be a risk of any officer seeing you with a gun and losing his mind. He's a big boy. He's 6'3", midnight chocolate, that wild hair that they wearing, you know. So an officer may consider him to be a threat. He's not small. And you know, I mean, we just got to be honest about our Black and brown boys, right? He's like, Mom, can I get a gun? No, because first of all, you can't have a gun if you're under 21. And that's what I mean when I say all the little B-boys, you know, they playing these video games. It's permitless carry. I can go get a gun. No, you can't. Not if you're not 21. Okay. And you need to make sure and tell them that. They don't seem to know that. And then they coming in my court mouthing out. What you mean? It's permitless carry. I can get a gun. No, you can't, because you're not 21. Right? Now, the law did recently change. Somebody's going to challenge me in a second and say, well, that law changed, right? It was a Supreme Court decision. It was, but there are still things you cannot violate. So mainly, we want to make sure they know they need to be 21 years of age. We would prefer if they old enough to buy cigarettes, right? You can buy a cigarette, you can have a gun. That's the way I try to think of it. In addition to that, you can't have other criminal offenses, right? So if you've ever been convicted, that's also going to be an issue for you. I've been a criminal defense attorney. This is my 24th year of practice. Very proud of the work I do. So they're always like, you know, Judge Jeffers, you used to be my attorney. I finished my conviction, right? I did probation, or I went to prison, came back, finished parole. I'm good, right? I can go buy a gun. Kinda, right? As long as you're more than 5 years past your date of conviction and you keep the gun at home, right? If you've been convicted of anything, you can't have a gun in your car. And that's where they get tripped up. What do you mean? I need to be able to protect my car. You're not going to be able to have it in your car. It's got to stay at home. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. All right. And then you can't have been convicted of any of these types of offense. So look, I got plenty of people in my family that have been convicted of stuff. Tell cousin Pookie, he got any of this. He ain't going to be able to have a gun. All right. You had a question. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Oh, you just stretching. All right. So, I mean, you know, I got plenty of folks too, so I get it. All right. So here's where 4602 gets iffy. It can't be in plain view. So you got plenty of people that'll jump in the car and then they just put their gun on the seat. Like they put their bag or their purse, or women will put their purse on the passenger seat, but it's unzipped. So when the officer walks up, he can see it. That's still in plain view. They'll say, well, Judge, it was in my purse. He shouldn't have been looking at my purse. Okay, well, if he looks at your purse and the handle of the gun sticking out, it's not concealed. Doesn't that make sense? So, you know, in the middle of the night, you get lots of people that want to argue with you, especially if they've been drinking, right? Because they think they know everything. But and you know, my Spanish is good when I've had a couple of margaritas, right? I'm a little bit more. It rolls off the tongue as well, right? I get it, but no, we can't do that. Right? So it can't be in plain view. You can't be under 21. And here's the other piece. If it is in plain view, it needs to be holstered. Okay. Now we get into all of this talk about, well, what's a holster? What about this holster? What is it? If you come into my courtroom and you tell me, well, I had it underneath the dash, it was with a magnetic holster, I'll take that and I'll dismiss your case. Now, law enforcement is still going to arrest you and bring you in front of me, but I will dismiss your case because at least you tried to follow the spirit of the law, right? Magnetic holsters, I'm good with. The law is kind of murky on the holsters. You know, some of them want you to have the holster and it needs to be concealed. Blah, blah, blah. I'm good. You got a magnetic holster and it's attached to your vehicle. I am quite fine with that. So I will dismiss it. But here's the other piece that gets us in trouble. All the young boys, you know, they want to be in the car with their gun on the passenger seat, smoking a little marijuana, right? I'm riding dirty, right? That's what they do. I got 3 young people. I told you they're 18, 20, and 22. I know all about that, right? They riding dirty. So they got their little marijuana, they feeling good. And then the cop stops them, roll down the window, and what does he smell? Because you know that stuff don't smell good, right? You know, I'm always looking at my son crazy. Please don't try to tell me you weren't smoking no marijuana. I smell it, right? So cop smells it, and now that gives him probable cause, right? But now here's the clicker. If you are engaged in another criminal offense, you have now violated permitless carry, because it says it can't be in plain view, you can't be under 21, and you can't be engaged in another criminal offense other than a Class C. So what that means is you can get a speeding ticket all day long with your gun in the car as long as you're over 21, right? But if you got marijuana, or if you had a glass of wine and you're drinking while driving, you have now violated permitless carry. I can't tell you how many people don't know that. They think, what do you mean? I just had one glass of wine. I'm not over a 0.08. But you're drinking while driving, right? Somebody could still argue you're under the influence, and now you got a gun. You got 2 criminal offenses. Does that make sense? So, people, I just want them to make sure they understand. If you have a handgun and you've been drinking, you're going to have to come see me. Now, the other piece of that is it tells you, or if you're en route to your motor vehicle on your own property, right? If the gun is in your motor vehicle, you're en route to your motor vehicle, or you're at your home, you're good. But if you're not, you're not. Okay? Does that make sense? Here's a little bit of the more particulars of the law. Again, have already been convicted of a felony. You can't have a misdemeanor family violence violation. You're fighting with your husband, you're fighting with your girlfriend, right? Especially while the case is pending. Or you can't have been put up underneath an emergency protection order because of a family violence or terroristic threat type case. Does that make sense? That gets real murky and probably too detailed for our purposes. But my point I'm making all you guys my mavens. Y'all read Malcolm Gladwell, right? Y'all gonna all be my mavens. I need y'all to go out into the community, sing it to the high hills. This is what Judge Jeffers says about permitless carry, because she's down there from Sunday through Thursday, 11 to 7 p.m. And she is tired of seeing y'all, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. She tired of seeing y'all getting arrested for these gun cases, right? When you think you have not violated the law, right? And everybody has a gun. So let's go over scenario 1. And I know I'm talking fast. Stop me at any time. Officer knows the defendant. He's familiar with him because he policing his community, right? And he knows his community. He's over 21, no criminal history, no protective order. He walking down the sidewalk. So he ain't even in no car, right? He has outstanding warrants though, and the officer knows that. He stops him. The warrants are confirmed. He arrests and executes on those warrants. He does a search incident to that arrest because now there's probable cause. And he has an unholstered handgun and some Xanax, right? Which is not a prescription. He just got them because these kids, they trade them on the street. That's what they do, in his bag. Guilty or not guilty? Why isn't he not? Because he is over the age of 21. It was in the bag, so it wasn't in plain view, right? And even though he had warrants and he had these prescriptions, he's walking. He's not in a car. So you see why? You see why? And that's why y'all want this PowerPoint. I'm going to send it to you because it's a lot of detail and it's a lot of stuff you got to go and make sure you think about. And then I want you to share with your church members and your schoolmates and your coworkers so that they know what's happening. Go ahead, madam.
So if you put the same guy in a car, is he now guilty?
Probably not, because we don't know that he actually took the Xanax. We don't know if he's actually driving while under the influence because we don't know that, right? And the gun is still concealed in the bag. But for him knowing that he had warrants, the officer wouldn't have never known the gun was there. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? I know you got to kind of think about it in a weird kind of way. So here's the next one. Uh-oh.
So the outstanding warrant gave them the right to search?
Correct. Go ahead. For our people on the virtual. Oh, she don't have to say it again?
You can repeat it.
If I repeat it, okay, you did tell me that, Sonia. I have to repeat it, which means I have to think about what you said. So the, say it again. So the outstanding warrants gives him probable cause of search. Was that your question, ma'am?
Yeah. That what gives officer probable cause to search.
Correct. He's familiar with them, right? Because he's policing his community and he knows his community members and knows he has these warrants. So he stops them. So yes, once the warrant is confirmed, that gives the officer probable cause of search. Does that make sense to everybody? Go ahead, madam. Behind you, Sonia.
Is it legal to have Xanax bars without a prescription?
It gets murky, right? Maybe, maybe not. It's not legal. It's illegal, right? He's probably going to get a possession of drug paraphernalia. A misdemeanor. Yes. Because we're under permitless carry, right? Not the Wild Wild West, but kinda, right? He did at least have it concealed. It wasn't in plain view. If anybody walked up on him, they won't be like, he's got a gun, right? Because that would be me. Oh my God, he's got a gun. I said I was scared of him, right? But I did go to my license to carry class, and that was comical, girl. When he told us to shoot and you had to get certain score, I'm like, dude. He's like, ma'am, you gotta look at the target. Anyway, we're gonna talk about that later. Yeah, as long as it's concealed, you're good. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, okay, so let's go on, because then I want to get to the community part where we had this dialogue about it. All right, so again, we talked about felony convictions. Can't have it if you have a felony conviction unless the gun is at home. So if you have a previous felony conviction, as long as you keep your gun at home, you're good. Can't put it in the car. You know about this? All right. And you've been able to tell your family members, your cousin, Pookies, everybody, right? Yeah. Keep it at home. As long as they keep it at home, it's okay. But I can't tell you how many probable cause warrants I sign every night before felon in possession, unlawful possession of a firearm by felon, right? Because he's put the gun in his car or he's riding around with it. And it's like, as long as you have a felony conviction, I can't have you do that, sir. And I'm like, Judge, what do you mean? I served my time. I paid my debt to the society. Agree with you all day long. I've been a defense attorney for 24 years. Agree. But your gun got to stay at home. All right. Go ahead, Sonia.
As a felon with a firearm, is that an automatic 5 years?
Not automatic. Depending on what their original conviction was, it could be a third degree, it could be a second degree. So the range of punishment on a third is up to 10 years. Range of punishment on a second is up to 20. But most of the time under DA Jose Garza, I'm learning that they're getting probation, right? And then told to take a gun education class, right? So they're familiar with the laws and know what the law says. Does that make sense?
I have
Go
a
ahead.
question.
Mhm.
At what point, if they've been convicted of a felony, can they carry, or is that not? Like, say it's been 15 years ago, it's not 5 years.
You can never carry it on your person because you're a convicted felon. Has to stay at home. So the law says you can defend your home. Even convicted felons can defend their home. But because they've been convicted, they can no longer carry it out in the world. You lose that right. Okay? And a lot of people don't know that. Sonia, and this person in the back too, when you get done over here. Go ahead,
If
madam.
somebody completed deferred adjudication, they're okay then, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking to the mic. You guys that are familiar with deferred adjudication, as long as a person completes a deferred adjudication, it's not a conviction. So they're good. If they're revoked on the deferred, it turns into a regular probation. Even if you complete a regular probation, it is a conviction. A lot of folks don't know that in the community either. They think, well, I got a probation. It's not supposed to be on my record. No. It has to be deferred. Right? Okay? Go ahead, madam.
I have a question about the slide that you talked about a while back about drinking.
Mhm.
So so you can't have anything to drink and have a gun in your car. Is that the right understanding?
Yeah, I mean, what it says is you can't be engaged in another criminal offense. I just went past it, right? So most of the time, what I'm seeing is you're riding dirty in that blunt. That's a criminal offense because possession of marijuana is still a Class B misdemeanor even though we've relaxed our marijuana laws, right? Or I see people that's leaving Sixth Street, right? And they had a couple drinks, or they're leaving the Roaring Fork or Eddie V's, a very nice restaurant, and they had a couple glasses of wine. Like our, who is it? The senator, representative, they just got arrested night before last when I was at work, and I was like, okay, we got to get him out of here quick. This is a security risk. We need to get him a bond and out of here. But yeah, you can't be engaged in another criminal offense. And if you're drinking while driving, that's a criminal
I mean, I
offense.
didn't realize you can't have anything to drink and drive. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's probably not if you're gonna have a gun, because the officer's gonna be, see, they expect you to do something silly because you had that intoxicating substance.
What if you don't have a gun?
Then you could,
Oh,
because as long as you're not engaged in another crime, you're fine, right? But we get nervous with people drinking, driving, and having guns in the car, right? Or we get nervous with folks having that blunt, riding dirty with a gun in the car. Does that make sense? Because we make silly decisions. Now, listen, y'all, I was still dancing on tables till I was 30. I get it. I don't want people to think I don't understand. This is my 24th year of practice. So you can add that up and you know how old I am, right? So, I mean, I get it. And I got 3 young people. I understand. But that's what I need y'all to be cognizant of, because we make silly decisions. Go ahead, ma'am.
So with the drinking thing, it's only, are they gonna test you for having ingested alcohol? Or is it only if you admit it out loud? Because if I was at the bar, I could have been at the bar and told you I didn't drink nothing.
Right, but he's gonna smell the alcohol on your breath. People forget that alcohol is metabolized in the air. So you speaking, I'm like, oh girl, what you been drinking? Right? We forget that when we drink. Does that make sense?
I mean, in my mind, I ain't never had nobody tell me they could smell the liquor on me unless I was already drunk. So if I'm at a dinner and I have a margarita and I still got the gun in my purse, I mean,
So officer stops you, you roll down the window. Why you stop me? Man, he's gonna say he smelled the odor. What the PC affidavit says is faint, moderate, strong. That's what it says. He has to check one of them boxes. Even if it's, but you're gonna have to go to court for the next year and it's gonna cost you $10,000. So you know what I want you to do? Don't be drinking and driving, Uber. Right? I tell these boys every night and girls, you know, pleasure meeting you, not under these circumstances. Please Uber in the future. That's what I tell them, right? Go ahead, sir. It's on you. Was on 6th Street. Oh. Right?
Right. On that same scenario, so she's had a drink, driving, has a gun, but the gun is in her purse and it's closed. Is that all good? Because he can't see the gun because it's in her purse. Yeah. I mean, I understand the Uber, I get it, but like, I'm just,
If it's concealed, she probably gonna be
Right.
good. But she's still getting arrested because she's drinking while driving. So you still gonna see me, and then I'm gonna be like, girl, what you doing? Oh, what you doing? Why you didn't Uber? Why you didn't get Lyft? I'm gonna be upset, right? And then I'm gonna put an ignition interlock device on your car. That's gonna cost you $100 a week. You're gonna have to blow into it every time you want to go to the grocery store to work, and you're gonna be mad at me for the next year, right? So what I'm gonna tell you to do? Don't drink and drive. Don't drink and drive. It's too expensive.
So what if someone has a gun concealed in their purse and they've been drinking, so they take a Uber? Is it okay to be in the Uber
It's fine.
drunk with
Yeah.
your gun in your purse?
Not engaged in another crime, and it's not in plain view. You good. So you could think about it and be like, okay, now Judge Jeffer says she didn't want to see me. Well, right, and then we have that scenario. Okay, those are good questions though, y'all. It sounds like y'all are thinking about it, and that's what I want, which is why I'm saying, y'all read Malcolm Gladwell, y'all gonna be my mate. I need you to go out into the community, tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell your children, your young people, this is what the law says. Be mindful. All right. Now we talked a little bit about them being under the age of 21. Even passing an 18-year-old as part of they have an emergency protection order that's pending. There are exceptions in the law for that. So I want to make sure that folks are aware of that. Okay, we talked about this already, being intoxicated. We talked about this screen already. All right, so here's scenario 2. Okay. Oh, we already did that. Sorry, I went back. You're right. Okay, we talked about the within 5 years. All right, here's the other caveat. They can't be a member of a gang. So I get the Bloods and the Crips, the little young boys that have been jumped in. They got their red, they got their blue, right? And it says that in the probable cause affidavit. Of course, when I see them, they in stripes. And they're like, well, how do you know I was in a gang? Yeah, it on red. Right? And they document them and they put it in the system that way so that when they stop them in the future, they know they're a member of this gang. So if you're in a gang, you're going to be stopped and arrested for unlawful carrying of a weapon because we don't want you to have no guns either. We don't want any of the gang members, Crips, Bloods, whatever it is. We don't want you to have no gun either, right? So that's the other caveat. That's why I had that slide there. All right. We talked about the protective orders. Now, here's the recap. Got to be at least 21, not a previous felon, no pending protective order or motion for emergency protection order. If you have been convicted of a felon, can't be within 5 years, right? You got to be 5 years past your date of conviction. You can't be drinking, right? Not intoxicated. And it has got to be concealed and holstered. Yeah, that all makes sense. That's what constitutional carry, permitless carry in the state of Texas says. It's not the Wild Wild West, y'all. We still got to follow the law. Sonia.
Do other judges interpret the magnetic holster similar to you?
I'm probably going to tell you no, especially in our, I'm probably going to just say no. I'm going to tell on myself. The law is a little murky, but if you get a good, if you're arrested for it and you get a good defense attorney, they'll get it dismissed. I mean, because it just says it has to be holstered. It doesn't say what the nature of that holstering has to be. Does that make sense? So for me, if it's a magnetic holster and you got it underneath the dash, even if the officer, now when the officer walks up and he's like this, he can see it, but if it's magnetized under there, I'm good with that. He may arrest you, but I'll dismiss that all day long. Matter.
I might have misinterpreted a slide earlier, but I thought it defined holster one way, and then it said 2021, no, like the definition been broadened. No, was that referring to something else?
That's why I keep saying it's murky.
Okay.
They've added some additional language, but if you got it in something, the little Walmart holster or the thing from Target, I'm good with that. Or if it's magnetized, I'm good with that. It just has to be in something. You can't just have it sitting on the passenger seat. That's not going to work. You have committed a criminal offense. Go ahead, madam.
Online question.
Absolutely.
Kimberly online wants to know, she moved from Florida where her carrying license is still active. Is her license transferable to Texas?
Very good question, Kimberly. For the most part, states have reciprocity, so they will honor other states' licenses to carry. She should be good and should be able to get it transferred. Yeah, go right ahead. I'm good.
Can you hear me? Okay. When are we going to see gun laws change, especially when dealing with mental illness?
Well, let's talk about that. Part of what I told them I wanted to do was have a dialogue. I have represented the mentally ill pretty much all my entire career. I've devoted my whole life to that community. My aunt growing up was mentally ill. She lived 4 houses down from her mother, my mother, who was her closest sister. They're 18 months apart. But of course, when you're a little bitty child, 9, 10 years old, and Aunt Lo comes streaming down the street in the middle of the night talking about Sting, they trying to kill me. And the little kids are looking out the window going, we don't see nobody. You know how we make up stories for Uncle Willie and Aunt Lo. And we say, oh, that's just Aunt Lo. We have to silence that shame about mental health in the Black and brown communities, right? We're just now starting to talk about it. So let's talk about that and what it means in as far as owning a handgun. And the reason why I want to talk about it is when I'm on the civil side and I have represented the mentally ill in family law cases, They have children at the same rate as those of us who don't have a mental illness, and they want to raise their children, right? So I have plenty of trials for my schizophrenic veteran who, doesn't know she's not doing well, unmedicated, right? Wilding out everywhere, but she thinks she's fine, right? Because she ain't on her medication, right? But she want to raise her kid, right? It's the same thing with guns. The mentally ill have guns at the same rate as the rest of us. Some of them have more guns. What do we do, guys? What do y'all think in the community is the solution? You hear all in the news about the red flag laws, how the Republicans don't want to honor them, blah, 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 blah. What do you think is the solution? I'm going to ask y'all some questions because I got to take it back to my stakeholder meetings and say, hey, I had this meeting at the CTAAFSC, and this is what some of the suggestions were. What do y'all think? Anybody? Just what do you think as far as guns and they being owned by those who we know may have a mental?
I think it would be ideal for there to be laws that change it, but I think that's hard when you're dealing with mental illness because there's different stages of mental illness. So if I'm diagnosed bipolar and my friend is diagnosed bipolar, her illness may be different from mine. The response, she could be a functional person with bipolar and I'm not functional, but do I still have the right to protect my home too? So it's so broad. I think it's one of the hardest things that we're going to ever have come to an answer for that because mental illness is mental illness. So if I'm bipolar and this person is OCD, both of them are mental illness.
That's right.
So how are we going to make a law for that? I think it's a hard situation, especially in the state of Texas, because I'm sorry, but the people that we have in office do not care about that right now. And that's why our homeless situation is like it is, and all the family violence and everything else that stems from mental illness is not being addressed today.
That is a part of it. What's your name, madam?
Aisha.
Aisha. That is a part of it. And I mean, I have to, Aisha, hit upon it. We've got a substantial homeless population here. They can go to Walmart and buy a gun too to protect their tent. There's nothing against the law that says they can't have a gun in a tent, right? And I see those cases. Now, as long as they are not a felon, that tent is their home. If they're protecting their home, it's not a criminal offense. Now, I've had some officers get in, argue with me back and forth about that, but the tent is their home. You get the right to protect it. Go ahead, madam.
I have a question. What if like a counselor, but it has to be like a master's level or like a psychiatrist signs off on that person owning a gun? Could that be a solution, or is there something in that's kind of
I mean, potentially, but will we ever get there in Texas with the folks we have in power? I don't know about that. Sonia, whichever way you want to go. Then I'm gonna leave it up to you, madam.
I'm an LPC and I don't think I would be comfortable ever endorsing that because at one moment, someone could be heavily in the mental illness and at other times they could be very mentally well. So.
I mean, think about our veterans, right? I mean, PTSD is an Axis 1 diagnosis, guys, right? And they have the right to own a firearm. Sir.
Yeah, I was going to talk about military and police officers. There's already a lot of stigma around mental health. So if you tell somebody who has advanced training and used a gun in life and death situations that, oh, you're addressing your mental health, but then take your gun away. That's just, it's not good. And then being another LPC, their mental illness changes. And honestly, I think a lot of people are exposed to mental illness and they don't even realize it, right? Somebody's going through some long-term grief and all of a sudden, they expose some things and they get diagnosed. Well, you got a good counselor, a good psychiatrist, good psychologist, and you get past that. And then because you got past that, but you got diagnosed. So you can never get that right back. And so it's a lot different than going to jail, having a mental illness, and keeping those two stigmas away from each other is
it's very difficult.
Yes, ma'am.
You see my struggle. You see my struggle in the nighttime sometimes.
I didn't have a question. I was just going to have a comment that not everyone with a mental illness has been diagnosed. And then we have to also keep in mind HIPAA. So those are some barriers that we're facing. We see it all the time with different, shootings and things that take place. As he said, you have law enforcement, you have veterans, and not everyone's been diagnosed. And we don't find out that there's an issue until there's an issue.
That's very true. That is very true. Sonia?
Back to you, Aish.
A response to your question, I think education for the community should be increased by 1,000, especially now that Ledge has declined the rights, or actually given rights back to people who are charged or alleged to have committed domestic violence. And so that is a crime: assault, strangulation, harassment, stalking. All of those are crimes. And I think a lot of people don't know that, right? And so educating the community on what is a crime might help if and when they need to ask for protection. The other thing is the law right now is limited to keeping someone from owning a gun who has a protective order. And we know that as communities of color, we don't necessarily always engage with legal services, law enforcement, and or the court system to file or even be approved for a protection order. So I think those are a lot of limitations that people and community churches, everyone would benefit more education from.
No, I'm going to add to both of these ladies' last two comments. You're correct. The protective order is designed to aid and help, but we don't always have folks that seek it. Especially if you have a woman with children who isn't working, is she going to seek the protection order against her offender if he's paying all the bills? Like, she got little kids at home. Is she going to prevent him from coming to the house for the next 60 days? I always call those ladies and I say, hey, or men, I don't want to be discriminatory. And I'll say, hey, this is Judge Jeffers. I'm your night court magistration judge on duty. I've got so-and-so in front of me. I'm asking if you want a protection order keeping him away from you for the next 60 days. And 7 out of 10 times they'll say, no, he can come on back. And I'm reading it and it looks terrible, right? It reads bad. No, I got these kids. He pays the mortgage, rent's very high in Austin. I want to be evicted. He can come on back. We'll figure it out. Can you make him take a class, Judge? Or I think he has mental illness. Can you make him get diagnosed? To your point, that's part of the conditions. A lot of times I'll make you go in diagnosis with ATCIC next 14 days. Provide proof, revoke your bond and bring you back in jail. And you have to tell me why you didn't go do it. So, those are one of the things I do as well.
I'm sorry, to add to my comment, the other systemic barrier is the fear of being reported, mandatory reporting laws. So the consequence of reporting is now there's involvement with child welfare.
Absolutely right. And that's another condition I'll add. If the officer does call CPS because the criminal offense occurred in front of the children, the slap, the punch, the hit, whatever, right? I say, okay, must follow all the recommendations of CPS safety plan, if any, and report to pretrial services and provide proof. So you're exactly right. But those are things that as judges, we got to make sure and close the circle, right? So I'm going to make you go to CPS and follow the regs. I'm going to make you go get the mental health diagnosis because there are, to your point, a lot of undiagnosed mentally ill individuals. But if I never make you go and get tested, and that first test, that first diagnosis at ATCIC, y'all, is free, right? The county pays for it. Okay, I need you to be mavens and tell your people in the public that as well. It's free. If I make it a condition of your bond and I'm gonna let you out, because the jail is not a hotel. I can't hold you there indefinitely. You gotta go.
Integral Care is your local mental health authority. So whether you have insurance or not, you can go to Integral Care, whether it's on the child and family services side, or whether it's on the adult side. Whether or not you get services through Integral Care as an adult is determined by them, because they only deal with the major diagnoses, which are going to be major depression, schizophrenia, bipolar. It's going to have to be one of the major ones. If you're a juvenile or on the child and family services side, any diagnosis, and you don't have to have income. You don't even have to have insurance.
Right. But that diagnosis to diagnose you, we're gonna cover that. So because people always in front of me, I can't pay for that. You ain't got to. I just want to know that you know what you got so we can provide you some services. Because of course, if I can't help you, then you're gonna be back in front of me and I'm gonna be upset. And you get the sad face and you get the mad face. And I'm like, why are you back, Mr. Davis? Why you back? You was just here last month arguing with your wife. Why you back? Did you go get diagnosed like I told you to? Go ahead.
So when someone is released for domestic violence and they're released and they was a gun owner, I mean, they had a gun, they carried it before, why isn't somebody picking up that gun before they're?
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, I was one of the first judges here to order the automatic surrender. Yeah. Yeah. In the words of Beethoven, yeah, I'm gonna take your gun. Because you just slapped your wife and I don't want you to do nothing silly. Or you just hit your husband upside the head with a beer bottle. Yeah, I'm gonna take your gun. I am. Within 48 hours, you got turned it in to JP5. Right? So once I started doing it, then everybody else started doing it, which is a good thing. We need those kind of progressive innovations because we know what's happening out here. Look, y'all, before I took this job in January, last year, I was your hearing officer from the Crime Victims Compensation Program. Okay, that's what I did. My first job out of college as an undergraduate in 1992, I worked for crime victims when the Crime Victims Compensation Program was just getting started. So I had the opportunity to come back 30 years later. We saw violent crime greatly increase in the pandemic, right? And a lot of that was due to the great increase in gun ownership. People was just wilded out. Oh, I'm going to get a gun. I don't know what's happening in the pandemic. I got to protect my house. I don't know if these people are going to be breaking in, right? So absolutely. I'm going to take your gun. Go ahead.
Chandra online wants to know, is open carry null and replaced by constitutional carry now?
For the most part, yes, they've kind of dovetailed together, which is why I have provided this overview. So you know what the nuances of permitless carry mean. It's not the Wild Wild West. You still got to follow the law.
I have a situational question from Tiffany. What if you live in an apartment and have a concealed weapon upholstered in a zipped up pocket while you're walking your dog for protection? Is that an offense? The reason she's asking, she has no criminal background, but she wants to know that she's walking on her home property, but it's really an apartment property. So she's curious about
as long as she's not drinking while she's walking, because that's a public intoxication, or smoking a blunt, possession of marijuana, class B, she good.
Okay, good. And then one last thing, Deontay is asking if you could discuss a little more about red flag laws. And there's a lot of hype about them not being constitutional. You know, there's a back and forth argument about whether or not that's constitutional. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I wish we could get somebody, our leadership is probably never going to institute red flag laws, but could they be helpful? Potentially, you know, as a community, we have to help sort of massage those laws to be something palatable that our leadership will pass. It's not likely to happen with the leadership that's currently in place. But that's why I'm asking y'all to all be mavens and go out in the public and say, hey, you know, contact your representative, contact your senator, say, this is what I think we need. Do I think we need red flag laws? All day long, but I'm just one little judge in the middle of the blueberry of the red apple pie of Texas in Travis County. Right. But that's part of why I want to have this conversation with y'all.
I just want to say that, you know, having been on both sides of the law, the red flag, I mean, when you talk about the red flag law, the mass shootings, and I want to say this is that most of those offenses weren't committed with illegal guns or whatever. I hate to tell you that because having been on both sides of the thing, you learn how to slide between state law and the federal law. I have never been unarmed because I know how to go to a private owner. I know how to step to a gun show. In good state of Texas, they got hundreds of them, you know. Long as you stay away from this, what does it say? Let me see your ID. Long as it's a private sale, God bless. You know, it is, you know, so.
How's that?
Yeah, you know, so you talk about taking, snatching people's weapons. You know, I'm gonna say this here. It took me 2.5 hours at one time to buy a legal gun.
Are there any automatic surrendering of guns if someone's been either in a situation for suicide or homicide or threats?
Not according to our laws. There has to be an associated assault, terroristic threat, deadly conduct, one of those types of offenses before we can order the surrender. If it's just mental illness, you know, they could get it on the civil side, but not on the criminal side where I work. So Judge Herman, who deals a lot with our, you're nodding your head, deals a lot with our mental health folks on the civil side, he could potentially order that, hey, I'm gonna have you turn in all your guns and surrender them. But correct. So yes, but on my side, it's got to be one of those enumerated offenses. You're welcome. Good.
Yeah, what is the difference between the permitless carry and they're saying constitutional carry and you got your concealed permit? What's the biggest differences between all of this? Like,
Yeah,
pretty black and white.
Sure, we're pretty much talking about the same thing. I mean, people call it constitutional carry outside of Texas. So that's why that started, because constitutional carry says the Second Amendment says I have the right to bear arms, so I get to have a gun and I don't have to have a license. That's what constitutional carry says. When Abbott and his friends pushed it through down here, they called it permitless carry. So it's the same thing though, using different words to describe essentially the same. You don't. That's why I gave you this whole PowerPoint. You really don't. I mean, we're under permitless carry, which means you can have a license to carry. And if you have a license to carry, it gets you into certain, you can go into a premise, right? That may have a sign posted as long as you have your license to carry. But essentially, you don't have to have it. And that's what permitless carry essentially means. But you still got to follow the law, which is why I want y'all to know, you know, you can't be under 21, can't be engaged in another offense, needs to be holstered and not in plain view, right? But yeah, we're essentially talking about the same thing. You know, because I'm a judge and I'm like, I need to know what the law says so I can, right? And the people that come in front of me, because what I'm finding is people don't know the law. Like they not reading it at all. And ma'am, it's permitless carry. It's the Wild Wild West. I get on a gun. Governor Abbott said I can. Yeah, but there are still some laws here. Why are you arresting me? Because you violated the law. So yeah, I got it because I thought it was best to educate myself as well. And I want y'all to educate all y'all friends. Y'all gonna be my mavens.
We have a question here, and then I want to let you know we're at the 15-minute mark.
Oh my God, that went so fast. Look at that. I was all nervous when I walked in here an hour ago.
With the automatic surrender orders, is there an option for people to sign ownership over to someone?
Very good question. That's what the law used to be here in Travis County. That was our local rule. Like if you got arrested for assault, family violence, terrorist threat, deadly conduct, something like that, the judge, county court judges, they're one level above me, would say, okay, I need you to hand your guns over to your mama or your cousin, and you need to do so within 48 hours. And we just, you know, we did it on the honor system. Child, we got so many guns now, we don't do that no more. We make them we make you turn them into JP5. So you have to turn them into Nick Chu's office. But that used to be the law. Just like 18 months ago, you could just hand it over to your mama. And as long as you came to court and you told me that, I would take you at your word. It was the honor system. Nope, not really. I'm not going to give you an option. So if you see me, you ain't going to get no option. But there are 15 other judges in my same capacity. Give you an option, right? I tell people all the time when I'm sitting there, I got the power, right? I got the power. My 8-hour shift is up. some other judge comes on duty. Then they got the power. But for the most part, we're all trying to do the same thing now. We've seen the level of crime greatly raised through the pandemic, so we're gonna make you surrender it for the most part.
So when permits were required, does that mean that there was a waiting period and there was education required?
Kinda. I mean, we're still in Texas, right? Gentleman behind you, you pointed out. I mean, you still got lots of private gun shows. People can roll up, go buy a gun. They ain't have to have
Without
no
a-
life.
Even when permits were required, they could do that?
Cause we're in Texas and we love our guns down here.
Yeah, just because there was an acquaintance that was suicidal and she just went out and bought a gun, went home, shot herself. That easy. So at,
Which is
like
why
the
red flag would
the
help,
Walmart
right?
or whatever. So if there was permit, wouldn't that have made her wait and
but-
get approved
Mhm.
and take a class?
But our leadership is not gonna do that. We're under permitless carry and they made sure that.
So
they
there
pushed
was
that
some
through.
benefit to having a permit, even though, yeah, she wasn't a criminal. She wouldn't have known to go to a gun show or whatever, but it might help prevent some suicides.
Potentially. Right. I was gonna say, and I was gonna say that too. Yeah. The public is at a gun show, right? They're neat. I've been to them before. They kind of scary. They got the big old guns, but I mean, they're neat. They show you all the guns. You get to handle them, I mean, right? This is Texas. I'm gonna tell y'all, my daddy is no longer with us, but in his closet where he kept all his church suits, right? That meant the closet that we couldn't play in. He had about 45 guns.
Oh,
He loved them. He had antique guns. He had the new latest SIG, right? He loved guns, but he was also a hunter. He grew up on 100 acres in Hugo, Oklahoma. I can still remember him, dissecting the squirrels on the side of the road, on the side of the house, talking about he about to make some squirrel soup. And I was like, what the hell is that, right? And you're like, what? But he was a hunter. So in Texas, we love our guns, right? And especially if you got folks that grow up on farms, like my family, both my mom and my dad grew up on the farm. I mean, my dad had 45 guns, girl, by the time he died. He loved them, would show them to you, but we couldn't play with them. And so that's the other thing I want to talk about. We didn't get to it because we're going to run out of time, but it's responsible gun ownership. Go ahead.
This isn't a legal question, it's a statistical information. I thought I heard once that people who buy a gun to protect themselves, that more often they end up hurt. Is that true?
I'm not going to speak on that. I don't really know. But what I can tell you is in relation to the responsible gun ownership, you're sort of touching upon that. What I can say to you is we had a lot of people buy guns in the pandemic, right? They put them in their car, they lock up their car, but then the car gets broken into and the folks know there's guns in them, so they steal them. So now we got a whole bunch of stolen guns out on the street, right? My everyday normal citizen, don't leave your gun in the car. Keep it in a lockbox in your house, right? Because folks know you got guns in the car, right? And they're stealing them. So go ahead.
I know a benefit because I'm a licensed carrier, and I know the benefit for me was actually learning the laws, not just for carrying, but what I was allowed to do and not to do. Because we did training on people breaking into the home, and you think, oh, just because this person entered my home, I can shoot him in the back. Was he?
You don't see me if you do that.
Yeah, so it was a good thing to see the other side of what, as me being a responsible gun holder, what I'm allowed to do that won't end me up in jail. You know what I'm saying? Somebody sitting in your driveway and you think they're a threat to your home and they really wasn't a threat and you shoot them, you're going to end up in prison.
You're going to see me.
And I just want to piggyback because I'm in this field of mental health and mental illness. What you said about somebody committing suicide and being able to have access to a gun. Yes, that may have been a change, but when somebody makes up their mind to commit suicide, there is special training that we all need, because it only takes, I think it's like 28 seconds to talk somebody down if you can talk them out of that place. So whoever that is that committed suicide, their mind was made up. That's what they was going to do. And it may not necessarily been with a gun. It could have been some other way. So I want to help you with that, because I don't know if that's a struggle or something that you're still thinking about. But let you know that that person's mind was made up. And a lot of times we live with a regret, what we could have done better or what we could have done. But when a person is in that mindset, that was their mindset.
Yeah.
Just to help.
Y'all, I think Sonia's gonna tell me I gotta wrap up. This is a 53 slide PowerPoint. As this young lady mentioned, if you get your license to carry, I've essentially put the whole class here. It's to educate you. So I want to suggest that everybody gets a license to carry. Yes, we're under permitless carry. You don't have to have it, but it's best because we all need to educate one another. And this is what's going to make our community safer. Thank you. We still got 10 minutes. Okay, y'all got any more questions?
Is 4:20. So you got like 10 minutes.
Well, I'm gonna let y'all go to get that traffic, but y'all good?
Got a question.
Oh, well, go ahead. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, I heard so much about mental illness the last few days.
Couple days.
I heard you also mention earlier about the like the gangs and stuff like that, wearing red and stuff, and the police officer more like, you know, can identify me because they're kind of like in the regular beat. And if this person is walking with a gun, all bulged out of his pocket, he'll kind of like probable cause for the officer to stop him. First of all, he's in the red and that sort of thing, okay? And then on the other hand, we can have a homeless person walking with a basket with a lot of things covered up, and he also can have a concealed weapon and probably a felony too. Could be a felony too, but he are most unlikely to get stopped because he like the crazy Joe. That's one of the crazy Joes just going on by his business. So so the observation, when I'm asking you, do you think the observation is pretty well equal as far as the police officer?
I mean, you know, that's a loaded question. You're trying to get me in trouble. But here's what I'm gonna say about the first scenario with the young man walking with the bulging pocket. We're looking for them on 6th Street, right? I mean, we got halo cameras. You on 6th Street, you on candid camera. Okay, people get upset when they come into my courtroom and they're like, they're watching me on 6th Street. Yeah, we watching you because we're trying to keep our entertainment district safe for everybody, right? You walking around with a bulging pocket, you're going to get stopped because it's not in a holster. And you cannot, we didn't go over this slide, it's probably 2 more down from this one, but you can't walk into an establishment that serves alcohol more than 51% with a gun. That's illegal, right? So you can't be on 6th Street with a gun. Right. And yes, we got you on halo and we watching you. And yes, we're going to arrest you before you ever walk into the club. Oh, he arrested me. He didn't read me my rights and he didn't even tell me what I did. The probable cause was the bulging pocket. Okay. Now, as far as Crazy Joe with the with the shopping cart, this carry, I mean, Crazy Joe may say that's his house. So now he ain't in violation because he protected his home, that shopping cart. Go ahead. Anybody else? We're in our last couple minutes.
I just have a statement. And I work more with children than I do adults, but people live and prosper with mental health. That's what it's about. It's about recovery and it's about being able to sustain in our communities. I think that the news, the media, and everything that goes on, the first thing you hear after a mass shooting is this person had a mental illness. To me, sometimes that mental illness is the scapegoat that society puts on the fact that this person did this heinous crime. No disrespect to
And that as a
anybody. who
community,
may
we
have
haven't done
lost
what we're
their
supposed
lives.
to do to enact the laws we're supposed to enact.
Yes. So I think we also have to remember that there's plenty of people walking around living their lives to their fullest potential with a mental illness, with intellectual and developmental disabilities that do not commit crimes, that aren't going out on spree shootings and things like that. So we can't, I think sometimes the stigma of a mental illness, people are thinking, oh, they can't have a gun because there's something wrong with them and they're going to shoot up something. And in reality, it's the neighbor next door. It's Mr. Rogers next door that may be that person.
Got a whole stockpile in the garage.
Versus this person who's dealing with their mental illness or their mental health challenges and are just wanting to live their lives.
Sure.
Because they are not their mental illness. They are living with it, but that does not define who they are.
Absolutely. Y'all, I appreciate y'all. This went so fast. I was so nervous and y'all just made it go by so fast. I'm Tanisha Jeffers again. If you commit a criminal offense, you'll see me. hopefully you'll never see me. Pleasure meeting you all.
All right, you guys, don't forget to do your surveys and your evaluations. They're on your seat. And if you need to sign in, if you came in late and you need CEU, see the Miss Jackie in the back.